Before dawn even considered touching the horizon, Omar was already awake, not because of an alarm clock, but from the familiar cracking of his own joints. The cold had settled deep inside him overnight, the kind that makes you feel older than your years. For a moment, as he blinked toward the ceiling of packed earth above him, he searched for some sign of comfort, of softness, of rest. None came, just the thin cracks on the ceiling, shaped like faded rivers on an ancient map. Behind him, quiet breathing filled the small room. Suri slept curled around their two children, holding them close as if her warmth alone could shield them from the morning chill. Their breaths were shallow, the kind of breath that comes with an empty stomach trying to make peace with another long day. Omar watched them for a moment, letting the soft glow of dying embers illuminate their faces. There was a tenderness there, and a weight, the kind that presses on a man without ever touching him. He rose carefully, trying not to wake them, and stepped out into the cold dirt yard behind their home. The ground was firm under his knees as he knelt, as he did every morning in the exact same place. Not because he thought it made his prayers stronger, but because routine was the one thing in his life that had never betrayed him. The air carried the faint scent of wood smoke drifting from distant homes, a scent that, in his world, meant work, survival, grit. Omar closed his eyes and let the chill sting his cheeks. His whispered prayer barely rose above the wind. It wasn't the prayer of a man asking for miracles, but of a man trying to stay whole. When he finally stood, he caught sight of his hands in the early light. Rough, cracked, lined with the history of stone, river water, and years of struggle. They weren't old hands, but they looked like they belonged to a man who'd lived twice his age. In each scar, each ridge, there was a memory of work done out of necessity, not choice. He reached for his pan, the wooden one resting beside the wall, worn smooth by time. His fingers moved across its surface, lingering on a dark stain in the corner. Years ago, a sharp rock had slipped and cut his wrist, the blood seeping into the grain of the wood. He tried to sand it out once, but it remained, like a small truth the world refused to erase. The path to the river was quiet. Trees stretched overhead, their branches forming a canopy that filtered the early light into pale gold. The only sound was the low hum of the current in the distance. Familiar, steady, predictable. The kind of sound a miner could follow even with his eyes closed. When Omar reached the water's edge, he leaned down and dipped his hands into the river. The cold shot up his arms like a warning. Still, he welcomed it. It grounded him, anchored him to the day ahead. The sun finally peeked over the hills, painting the sky in soft amber. As if offering beauty, he no longer felt he deserved time to admire. Omar lifted the pan, breathed once, and lowered it into the river. But something inside him tightened, a small, quiet twist in his chest that didn't come from hunger or exhaustion. It felt like the world, in all its silence, was waiting for him, as if something beneath that steady current was shifting, something he couldn't yet name. He didn't know why, but the river didn't feel the same. The river didn't feel like itself that morning. Omar had been working for hours, yet the day seemed frozen between breaths. The current moved, but without its usual rhythm, as if something beneath the surface held it back. The silence around him wasn't peaceful. It was expectant. Even the birds, always quick to claim the sky at sunrise, stayed quiet. He dipped the pan again, watching the sand whirl and settle. But the motion that normally grounded him only deepened the knot forming in his chest. Something was wrong. He couldn't name it, but the unease crawled up his spine like cold fingers. That was when he heard footsteps behind him. Slow, dragging, uncertain, not the sure stride of another miner, nor the heavy step of someone approaching with purpose. Omar turned. An old man stood at the edge of the clearing, tall, thin, resting on a twisted cane. His clothes were simple, but far too clean for someone wandering the valley at dawn. His hair was white and long, caught by the breeze like strands of light. But it was his eyes that made Omar stiffen, sharp, silver, and strangely aware, as if he had come not to pass by, but to witness something. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The old man gazed at the river, like he was listening to it. Not the water itself, but something beneath it, something only he could hear. "Finally," he said, in a voice roughened by age yet steady as stone. "You've lost something." The words hit Omar harder than he expected. He straightened, confused. "Sir, I don't understand." The man didn't look at him. He pointed at the flowing river, at the bits of leaves and small branches drifting downstream. "Most things we lose leave quietly," he murmured. "No splash, no scream. They simply slip away, taking a piece of us with them." A cold shiver spread through Omar's chest. Before he could ask what that meant, the old man turned. His steps were slow, the cane tapping softly on the dirt path, each strike oddly rhythmic, almost ceremonial. Omar blinked once, and the stranger was gone. He tried to shake it off. Maybe hunger was playing tricks on him. Maybe exhaustion. But when he reached for the cloth bundle that held his only meal for the day, the small piece of bread and a handful of rice suri had carefully saved, his heart lurched. It wasn't there. His hands searched the ground. Nothing. Then he looked toward the river and saw it, a pale scrap of fabric floating in the current. No. He ran along the bank, stumbling over stones and roots. For a brief second, he thought he could reach it, but the current pulled the bundle farther, faster, until it vanished around a bend. His throat tightened, his stomach twisted. It wasn't just food, it was his strength for the day. It was a piece he could have shared with his children. Gone, just like the old man had said. The river murmured, low and restless, like it was hiding something. Then another voice, unwelcome, sharp, cut into the silence. "Rough morning, Omar." He froze. He didn't need to turn to know the voice. Damien. The gold buyer approached with slow, confident steps, boots clean, clothes spotless. He scanned the riverbank, then Omar, then the empty space where the food should have been. "What's this?" Damien smirked. "The river took something from you?" Omar clenched his jaw. He didn't answer. Damien stepped closer, lowering his voice. Men who can't hold on to the little they have." A pause, a smirk, usually lose even more. It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. Omar looked at the river. Its steady surface no longer comforted him. The world felt smaller, tighter, as if something unseen had shifted, and the ground beneath him was no longer stable. He lifted his pan again, hands trembling, not from cold, but from the quiet, growing certainty that whatever had started that morning was only the beginning. The rest of the morning felt heavier than the hours that had come before. Every time Omar dipped the pan into the water, the rhythm felt wrong. Too fast, too slow, too sharp. His breathing wouldn't settle. Even the river sounded different, its murmurs edged with something that felt like warning or grief. Kareem approached by midday, wiping sweat from his brow with a trembling hand. "You feel it too, don't you?" he asked quietly. Omar didn't look up. "Feel what?" Kareem scanned the river, the tree line, the empty spaces between things. "This place," he whispered. "It's off." The river dropped, then rose again, and now it's moving sideways. "That doesn't happen. Not here." Omar said nothing, but his pulse quickened. The old man's voice echoed inside him. "Most things we lose leave quietly." Kareem lowered his voice even more. "And that stranger, the one who passed earlier, he wasn't from the valley. I'd bet anything on that." Before Omar could respond, a metallic clatter cut through the air. Boots on stone. Heavy. Intentional. Damien. He walked with purpose this time. No smirk, no lazy arrogance. His jaw was set, and his eyes carried a gleam Omar had never seen before. Something sharper, something impatient. "Still here?" Damien asked. His tone was cold, not mocking. Omar straightened slowly. "I'm working. Damien scoffed. "You're wasting time." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Something's shifting in this river, Omar, and I'm going to find out what it is. You'd better hope you're not in my way when I do." The words weren't spoken like a threat, but like a declaration of ownership. Before Omar could reply, Damien turned and walked off, boots crunching over the stones like breaking bones. Kareem exhaled shakily. "He knows something," Kareem muttered, "and that scares me more than the river." Omar felt the knot in his stomach tighten again. He looked at his hands, at the tremor in them. Not from fear, but from the sense that something was building. Something he wasn't prepared for. He stayed a little longer before finally gathering his things. The sun was lower in the sky, casting the valley in the amber glow of early evening. Normally, this light brought a sense of quiet to the miners, a soft pause after a long day. Not today. The wind carried an unusual chill, as if the world had turned its face away. On the walk home, Omar passed by the small chapel near the edge of the village, a simple wooden structure with a weather-worn cross leaning slightly to one side. Usually he stopped, even briefly, even just to touch the doorframe. But today, he couldn't bring himself to pause. His steps were too heavy, his thoughts too loud. When he reached his home, Suri was outside, kneeling beside a small fire. The pot above it produced almost no steam. When she looked up, her eyes revealed the truth before she even spoke. "There wasn't much left in the pantry," she said softly. "I stretched what I could." Omar felt his throat tighten. He sat beside her, watching the faint simmer of the pot, thin broth, barely enough for the children. He wanted to tell her about the old man, about the food swallowed by the river, about Damien's warning, but the words felt tangled inside him. Suri reached for his hand. "Omar, something's bothering you." He swallowed hard. "Something's changing." She didn't ask what. She didn't need to. She had always been able to feel the weather inside him long before he spoke of storms. As night settled, Omar stepped outside again. The moon hung low, bright as a lantern. The valley was silent except for the distant whisper of the river, a whisper that felt closer than it should have been. He breathed deeply, trying to steady the weight sitting on his chest. The world wasn't breaking apart. Not exactly. But something inside it, or inside him, had shifted, and the shift was irreversible. Whatever had started that morning would demand something of him. He could feel it. And you? Have you ever felt that something in your life was changing before you could understand why? Tell me in the comments. I'd really like to hear your story. The night barely let go of him. Omar woke before dawn, long before the first hint of blue touched the horizon. But this time it wasn't hunger or habit that stirred him. It was something deeper, a pull inside his chest, as if the river itself had laid a hand on him and whispered, "Come back." Suri noticed immediately. "You're not well," she murmured. Her voice carried worry and tenderness in equal measure. Omar didn't know how to explain the heaviness inside him, a heaviness that wasn't sadness, but something closer to destiny. "I need to go," he said quietly, and the way he said made Suri fall silent. The walk toward the valley felt different. The trees didn't sway. The wind didn't breathe. Even the birds remained hidden in their branches, like spectators waiting for something they weren't brave enough to witness. By the time he reached the river, dawn was only a suggestion, a faint silver line behind the mountains. And the river was lower than before. The ground beneath Omar's feet felt wrong, too exposed, too vulnerable. The water had pulled back even further during the night, revealing stones that hadn't seen sunlight in decades. As he stepped closer, Omar froze. The old man was there, not on the opposite side of the river this time, but standing on the exposed riverbed itself, tall and unmoving, like a figure carved from the earth. There was no cane, no limp. The man's posture was impossibly straight, almost regal. His hair swayed gently, even though the air was still. Omar's breath turned shallow. He took a step forward. "Why are you here?" The old man looked at him, and in his eyes, Omar saw an understanding so vast it felt ancient. "I warned you," the old man said. His voice carried more strength today, echoing slightly as if the river amplified it. Omar swallowed hard. "You said I'd lost something." "No," the man corrected. "I said you were losing something, and you still are." Before Omar could ask what he meant, a sound ripped through the air, heavy boots hitting stone. Damien. He came down the slope fast, eyes burning with something between greed and fear. His boots slid on the exposed stones, but he kept his stance firm. "There it is," Damien hissed. His gaze was fixed not on Omar, not on the old man, but on something behind them. Omar followed his line of sight, and then he saw it, tucked in a crack of the riverbed, shining faintly in the newborn light. A deep, unmistakable gleam of gold. Not flakes, not dust. A vein, a real gold vein, exposed just enough to reveal its promise and danger. Damien rushed forward like a man possessed. "That's mine," he barked. "I knew it. I knew the river was hiding something." The old man didn't move. He simply watched. Omar felt the world narrow around him. The river, the stones, the gold, the cold air scraping his lungs. Damien shoved past him, nearly knocking him to the ground. "You stay out of this," Damien snapped. "You hear me? This is my claim." But Omar didn't hear him. Not truly, because behind Damien, half buried in the dried mud, was something else. A broken piece of wood, split right down the middle. His pan, his old, faithful pan, shattered exactly where he had left it in the vision of the river's earlier withdrawal. Omar felt something inside him snap, not with anger, not with fear, but with clarity. The old man turned his eyes toward Omar again, and for the first time, Omar understood. The man wasn't warning him about gold. He was warning him about becoming the kind of man who chases it. The river wasn't opening a path to fortune. It was opening a mirror. Damien reached for the exposed crack of gold. The river roared, not loudly, but with a sudden, low thunder that rolled under the earth, vibrating through Omar's bones. A piece of the riverbed gave way, and Damien stumbled, his hands scraping against sharp stone. He cursed, shaking with fury and fear. Omar stood still, breathing, watching, changed. The old man whispered, barely audible, "Now you see." And Omar did. He wasn't meant to claim that gold. He was meant to walk away from it. If this turning point hit you as deeply as it hit me, tap the like button. It tells me you're feeling this story with your whole heart. The river didn't rise immediately. It trembled first, a deep, rolling vibration beneath the stones, before the water finally crept forward, reclaiming what it had revealed. The gold vein, the cracked earth, even the broken pan began to disappear beneath the returning current. Damien cursed, stumbling backward as the first wave reached his boots. Damn it. No, not now. He scrambled like a man, trying to grasp a dream, slipping through his fingers. Omar didn't move. He stood at the edge of the riverbed, watching the water close over the gold as quietly as it had opened. Not dramatic, not violent, just certain, like a door being gently shut. The old man was already gone. No footsteps, no last glance, just absence. And strangely, it felt like the final part of the message he had come to deliver. The wind shifted, carrying the smell of wet earth and cold stone. Omar inhaled deeply. For the first time in days, his breath didn't shake. He turned away. Damien shouted behind him, voice cracking with panic. "Omar, help me dig it out. I know you saw it. I know you want it too." But Omar didn't. Not anymore. He didn't look back as Damien continued shouting, the words losing clarity and dissolving into the steady rise of the river. Omar walked the long slope toward the village. His steps were slow but not heavy. Something had loosened inside him. Something tight, something old. Not relief, not joy, but release. The sky had softened into a muted gray by the time he reached the outskirts of the village. The small houses, with their patched roofs and crooked fences, looked the same as always. But the world inside his chest wasn't the same. Suri was outside, hanging wash clothes on a line. The breeze tugged gently at the fabric, turning shirts into small waving flags. When she saw him, she paused, concern sharpening her features. "You're back early again," she said quietly. Omar nodded. For a moment, he didn't speak. Not because he didn't know what to say, but because speaking felt like stepping out of a dream he hadn't fully woken from. He walked to her and took the clothespin from her hand, setting it gently onto the line. Suri watched him closely. What happened out there? He sat down on the small wooden step by their door. Not defeated, just done with something. A chapter closed. The river changed, he said softly. Suri frowned. In what way? Omar looked out across the valley, at the rippling trees, the distant hills, the silent chapel. In a way that changed me. He didn't explain about the gold, or Damien, or the old man. He didn't have to. The words would have cheapened what he felt. And Suri, with her quiet understanding, seemed to sense that. She sat beside him. Their shoulders touched. Not a grand gesture, no dramatic embrace. Just presence. Enough. The evening settled around them. The children laughed somewhere inside the house, chasing each other with worn little shoes tapping against the floorboards. The sound was familiar, but today it reached deeper into Omar, warming something he hadn't known was still alive. Suri leaned her head gently against his. Whatever it was, she whispered, "You're here now." Omar closed his eyes. "Yes," he breathed. "I am." A simple truth. A new beginning disguised as an ordinary moment. The world hadn't given him gold. It had given him clarity about what mattered, what didn't, and what he refused to chase anymore. He opened his eyes again, looking at the home in front of him. The same home, but not the same man. There were still uncertainties, still hunger, still hardship. But for the first time in a long time, Omar felt capable of facing them without breaking. A single tear slipped down his cheek, not from pain, but from the quiet strength rising inside him. He wiped it away before Suri could see. If this moment touched your heart, your support means the world, whether through a super thanks or simply subscribing to stay with us. These stories only live because you're here. In the days that followed, life didn't transform suddenly. Not in the way stories sometimes promise, with miracles that arrive wrapped in gold. No, the valley remained the valley. The house remained humble. The pantry wasn't magically full. And yet, something unmistakable had shifted. Inside Omar, the world had opened a quiet new space. He woke before sunrise as always, but now there was no rush in his movements, no desperate race toward the river, no silent pleading that today, finally, would be different. Instead, he stepped outside and let the morning breathe around him. The air carried that familiar scent of dew on earth. But this time, he wasn't swallowed by the weight of another long day. He simply stood there listening to the distant water, to the slow hum of insects, to his own steady heartbeat. For the first time in years, he realized he wasn't moving through the world as a man chasing survival, but as a man choosing how to exist inside it. Suri noticed the change before he said a word. One afternoon, she found him fixing the wooden railing beside their door, something he had meant to repair for months, but never had the space in his mind to do. His movements were so gentle, so unrushed, that she paused in the doorway just to watch him. "You're different," she said softly. Omar set the hammer down, wiping the sawdust from his hands. "Maybe," he replied, but the smile tugging at the corner of his mouth said, "Yes," more clearly than any words could. Later, he walked with his children to the edge of the village. They collected small stones, pretending they were treasures from some faraway kingdom. Omar lifted one to the sun, letting the light roll across its surface, and he found himself truly seeing it. A simple stone, but in its stillness, there was beauty he had forgotten how to notice. The river, too, had returned to its old self. Steady, patient, wordless. But Omar no longer approached it with the hunger of a desperate man. Instead, he stood on the bank one morning, watching the water move as if it were an old friend. The memories of the gold vein, the old man, Damien's rage, all of it remained, but softer now, like echoes of a storm that had already passed. He didn't need answers, didn't crave explanations. Some things in life aren't meant to be solved, only understood. And he understood this. What he thought was breaking him had actually been reshaping him. He turned away from the river with a kind of peace he had never known. A fragile peace, yes, but real. The kind that grows not from what you gain, but for what you let go. And now, Dyksa EU Failer Convose, because if Vose Shegu Aid Acqui, this story wasn't just background noise for you. It stirred something, maybe something small, maybe something you hadn't named yet. Sometimes life doesn't give us gold. It gives us moments. Moments that break us open. Moments that force us to stop running. Moments that reveal the pieces we didn't know we were holding too tightly. And you, maybe you've lived something like that too. Maybe a door closed on you and you thought it was punishment, when in truth, it was protection. Maybe you lost something quiet, something no one else noticed, and it changed everything inside you. Or maybe, just maybe, You've reached a moment where the river inside your life is shifting, and you don't yet know what will rise or disappear when it settles. Whatever your story is, thank you for staying here with me until the final breath of this one. Your presence matters. Your heart matters. And you're not walking through your valleys alone. If this story spoke to you, deeply, softly, on estimate, thank you. Truly. And if you feel called to stay, to keep walking with us through, there's another video waiting for you right here. Sometimes one story ends just so the next one can find you. Let's keep going together.